ladies and gentlemen. Let's get started. Thank you for being here.
Certainly not just Miguel with us.
I love this sound system, which is awesome. Everyone can hear. Beautiful day to be away from work and up here to eat lunch. Uh, just hours away from watching Utah lose. So I think this is a perfect Thursday. I don't know about you, but we planned that into McCann's day, is what time that's going to happen. My name's Dave McCann. I am a friend of Nevin Anderson's right here. Nevin's got a place up the hill, and he invited me to stop in today and introduce these two candidates. The format will be each one will take 5 minutes or so and express their vision and plan for what they'd like to see happen, and then the two of them will be here and take your questions. And after the Q&A, Caitlin Felstead will wrap things up. Shout out to the providers of our lunch today. Thank you for that. I love those sandwiches. It's always a responsibility in things like this. I remember I'm reminded of the guy who went in to get a job, and he was being interviewed, and the employer goes, we're looking for someone responsible. And the guy goes, well, I'm your man, because every time something went wrong at my last job, they said I was responsible. So I am responsible to get these two candidates up here. I'm going to try to do a nice job. We want to give a shout out to Tyler Clancy, Utah House Representative. Wave your hand, Tyler. And Christy Henshaw, the chair of the Utah County Republican Party, is here with us today. Thank you for being here. Thanks to everybody. In my days in Las Vegas, I covered boxing, and so they always had two, combatants, and the ring announcer would get up, and there'd be a blue corner and a red corner. But since these two aren't running against each other, we don't really have that today. So it's still two candidates, and they're in the same corner. So that complicates. There's no Michael Buffer, let's get ready to rumble thing here today for lunch. But as a resident of Provo, it is delightful to have good people running for office, and there's a lot of good candidates running for a lot of offices, and we have two of them up here today. And I wish on the national scene we had more good candidates running for powerful offices in our country. But in Provo, we have plenty of good folks, and I'm excited to bring up the first one today. Currently on the State Central Committee for the Republican Party. Last year served as the neighborhood chair for District 1, which is where we are, the northern one-fifth of Provo. Spent most of his professional career as an associate and equity partner at Bracewell, national and international firm that negotiated business deals for companies here and all over the world. Education has shaped his life. He and his wife, Melanie, graduated from BYU, but he also graduated from the University of Texas Law School. Now, we play the University of Texas on October 28th, and I trust there will not be a conflict of interest in that one. I went on my mission and served in Austin, and I don't have a conflict either, so I don't anticipate you having one either. Parents of 4 kids ranging from 9 to 17, which puts him right in the threshold of patience, perseverance, determination, and more patience. Resident of Provo since 2017. Please welcome, ready for District 1, Stan Jensen. Stan.
Thank you, Dave. I I guess I should begin by saying I don't have a conflict. I will be rooting for the team in blue, not the one in burnt orange. Um, in January of '89, Ronald Reagan gave his final speech as President of the United States. The, uh, the speech was called a Shining City on a Hill, and he talked about America's role as a beacon and a light unto the world. And I want to, he talked about hope and optimism, and he set forth a vision that we could continue to be that as long as we believed in that, worked together on it, and used the gifts that we've been given. I want to talk to you today about a small corner of America, Provo, Utah. Provo is a place with a wonderful group of kind, hardworking people who value family and community. I I love living in Provo. I love the many things we're doing right here. I'm also concerned that Provo is facing some challenges now. We're facing pressures to grow too fast in ways that would weaken our community. We're, we're facing challenges and pressures to spend too much or to incur debt that is excessive. And we also have the risk of losing our focus on our core responsibilities and wandering off to do things that are not they're not the core job of a city and that cause contention and negativity. I want to talk a little bit about just one of those first, which is the pressure to grow, because it's probably one of the most prominent things everybody's aware of. Everywhere you look, you see things being developed, and some of them being developed well, and others not being developed in a way that makes sense. When Provo was put together, they put together, a plan. Just like most cities, you have zoning, you have important areas allocated for different growth and different development, and they also put together a process for how that would change. And the key part of that process was involving neighborhoods and communities and individuals in that change, so that they would both know about what was being proposed and have a real voice in those decisions. Recently, that voice has been minimized some. We do not get the same kind of notice or participation in some of those important roles. And in fact, even the neighborhood chairs and other folks that are asked to represent us are no longer elected, but are rather appointed and serve at the will of the city, subject to replacement with or without cause. I think that's the wrong direction. I think that a government's designed to serve the people and find out what their values and priorities are and implement those, not dictate or tell them what they should be. Another area, I went door to door, and I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of people, and I asked most all of them the same question. I asked, what do they like about Provo, and what are their concerns? And one theme that comes up a lot is the spending and tax situation. And so I looked through the budgets and whatnot, and it's true. Our budgets are growing faster than inflation. We're spending an increasing amount. But why does that really matter, or should that concern us? Let me share one experience I had that brought this home to me. I was actually earlier this week, I was down in Edgemont, and I was just going door to door talking to people. And I approached a lady. She was in her 70s, sitting on the porch. She looked happy, comfortable. She had a dog, puppy, playing energetically near her. I walked up. I said, "Hello, my name is Stan." She said, "Stop. I know who you are, and I'm going to vote for you." This is great. That doesn't happen very often. We get a lot of responses when we're campaigning, and that's not the most common. So I went with it. I said, "Well, thank you. I appreciate your support. What are your issues? What motivates and concerns you?" And she shared that basically her story. She's lived in Provo most of her life. She's worked for decades for the public school system. She enjoyed that work, loved it. In due course, she retired, and now she is on a fixed income in a modest house. And she talked about ways she's economizing, ways she's waters her lawn every 6 days and moves things around, by hand, and watches the electricity and all these things. But in spite of that, she is taxes and the utilities that she's paying is making it look like she has to move. Oh, we need to do better. But I don't want to put an overly negative picture. Provo is doing a lot of things right. The government and the people are building for the future. They are working together in ways that do strengthen us. But there are a few areas we need to have a better focus. When I think of a city, I think of a city as having 4 core jobs. Public safety first, which is just your police, your fire, your emergency responders. It's your neighborhoods, preserving and protecting those. It's the parks, trails, open spaces, and then it's your streets, roads, and infrastructure. Provo is doing pretty well on all of those things, but occasionally the focus wanders, and they wander off and do things that don't represent the values of Provo, and they do things which cause contention and conflict, and I think that's a mistake. In general, I'm very optimistic on Provo. I'm optimistic because I think as long as we keep our focus on these core things, as long as we manage our budget and resources appropriately, and as long as we remember that government is there to serve, to listen first and understand, and then implement the will of the people, not to dictate, I think we're going to do very well. And finally, I'm optimistic because of you. the people in this room, you people are involved, you're paying attention, you're participating in this 200 plus year old experiment in self-government. And I appreciate that. I appreciate what you're doing for Provo, for America, and for this community. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, politicians have changed since we were kids. I grew up. My boyhood home is just over there by that house with the trees, and now we live just down here, um, not far from Nevin. And athletic directors and politicians have changed. The athletic director used to be a rah-rah guy in sports, and now it's all business. And politicians used to be rah-rah men and women, and now it's all business. It seems like just things have gotten more serious, and we need serious people who understand business to be involved. And these are two that get that, especially from their backgrounds. And it's my pleasure now to introduce another young man, 30 years as vice president of New Skin in downtown Provo. Think how much downtown Provo has changed since New Skin moved the first piece of dirt to build that facility. Former member of the Provo City Council, active in the Utah Valley Chamber of Commerce and Provo Downtown Alliance, played a key role in that Provo Rec Center. My kids love the pool, the slides. As he and his wife Jana have 5 kids. They're back from serving as mission president in Panama. And both he and Stan committed to fighting for our quality of life here in Provo, which is pretty awesome. It's my pleasure to introduce Gary Garrett. And after Gary is done, the two will come up and take your questions. So, Gary.
Thank you, Dave. Well, this is a first for me, not in the sense of a cottage meeting. I did one last night at the library with the candidates for district for the citywide seat with Melanie McCord. But it was in a room there at the library. The first for me is having a live PowerPoint behind me. I'm going to switch to my first slide, which you can see right there. Such a beautiful view. And so thank you, Nevin and Dave, for hosting us here today at this beautiful facility. It's great to gather and appreciate the quality of life that we do enjoy here. A lot of people ask me, as I visit with others as well, why I'm running and my interest in getting back. I did serve a term before I finished some projects at New Skin, where I worked downtown and then on to a mission. It is a great quality of life that we enjoy, and we want to preserve that. I want to do my part to help keep that preserved for us here to enjoy. But I want to touch on 3 points. First is economic development and the great business sector that we enjoy here in Provo. It's been exciting to see the downtown grow. Working with the Chamber of Commerce and Corporate Alliance for many years, it didn't always have the vibrancy that it does now. And to see the restaurants and other retail coming downtown, housing as well, any consultants that we would bring in with one of these organizations would talk about from other cities that a city is as healthy as its downtown. So as is a downtown, so is the city. It reflects the vibrancy of downtown, and it's been great to see that continue to be vibrant. We have some work to do. There's land now adjacent to the new city hall, and I know they're taking proposals for that. I'd like to see some open space and some mixed use there for more retail and residential as well downtown. Secondly, and I'll switch to my next PowerPoint slide. I want to talk about the quality of life a bit. Stan touched on safety, on the neighborhoods that we enjoy. It's important that we continue to reinforce that here as a community. And third, it's hard to talk in Provo and not reflect on the great engagement of our citizens. The city has quite a few commissions and boards that many serve on. There's everything from sustainability, and historic preservation, and others that are yet to be formed. But it's great to see the engagement of citizens who bring their expertise and want to improve the city that way. And I want to see that continue. That's a big part of the quality of life that we enjoy. So I'm happy to be running. If you received a ballot, if you live in Provo, you received a ballot in the mail. It has just the citywide race on it right now because it's the only race with more than 2 candidates. The purpose of the primary, as you know, next Tuesday, the 5th, is to narrow every race to 2 candidates. And so we'll see that happen on Tuesday. And I'm pleased and proud to participate in this process with other fine men and women here in the city. Thank you. We're happy to respond to any questions that you might have, and we'll take a few minutes and answer your questions, each of us, and then of course are happy to stay and visit with any of you afterwards as well. Yes.
As in say, we sure we all see these kids with e-bikes and don't have rug. Is there any talk about that? They what?
There certainly is talk in my household, and I assume there's talk because we do. I drove to today's market and following 2 small like mini bikes with what looked like 14-year-olds, and my wife and I talk about that a bit. I went down by the car wash and saw a golf cart coming up with young kids, and they had just gotten pulled over. And I took a photo and sent it to my wife. Finally, we need to help these kids not get. I don't want to see happen here what happened in American Fork a couple of months ago.
It'll take.
I hope not. Yeah, I hope that we can get some. I know it's going to take sometimes phone calls from us to public safety to help this.
I was asking for suggestions.
Yeah, the issue has come up a couple times. The initial answer that they've talked about, and this is not really directly targeted at age, they want to monitor the speed for everybody who's on the electric bikes. And so the police do have a program now where they're trying to implement that speed limits. As far as the age one, I haven't heard specifics. I know they're working on it, but I think, what is the best way to get information in? I mean, if you see actual things where either there's the speed's excessive or the age is too young, I would call them in as the non-911 non-hotline as ongoing things. And you can also talk to members of city council. They're the ones who will ultimately pass the laws that apply to that. Go ahead.
Oh, young children. More like they don't understand. And they can't. I saw a little about 10-year-old coming. Yeah, they keep the car to a 4-way stop, winding around all the cars, one was running away, nobody was going, so they just tipped the innocent. I think the law they have to be works saying we on a e-bike. And I think we need to talk about e-keys and then we get some find out the best way on cheap setting up the lines and it's that's to show them on the mile on but on this
Yeah, thanks, David, for raising that. I agree with what you're saying, and the reference to the law you're referring to is basically a fallback when we had mopeds that they had a 14-year-old. So there was an old law in place, and that probably does apply to the new ones. So yes, getting signage and those things is probably a great starting point. A lot of it's going to happen in people's homes where they clarify that you can't be out on public streets and at those ages.
filthy.
Yes, you're absolutely right, and there's even a slight, it's been made a little worse by something. They just changed our bike laws, so the bicycles now don't have to stop at stoplights. which was to help bicycles. But that example to young children is not good. um, thanks, Carolyn. Christy, go ahead.
And so what do you think the county because it's probably a number one issue against city races. And I think that issue has to do with development. And when you talk to everybody, they get the thing answer that they state legislature and those things getting mandated from the state. Okay. And so you're seeing high density in places that do not want it. And the cities are getting blamed for it. The citizens are upset, and the cities are saying, hey, not our fault. The state's telling us that we have to. I know Orem is at 46% rentals, and they're saying at one point, are we no longer Orem if you just keep forcing this on us? So my question is, as you look at that being a potential problem, do you guys have any ideas to get your fans together with other cities to somehow put some pushback? Because there seems to be that the legislature has a lot of real estate developers that are in office that benefit from this. Mm-hmm. So it's a struggle to see exactly where it's coming from. But I feel really bad that cities are getting blamed for it, but I also think there's a potential for the answer to lie within cities, giving some pushback or any conversation about that.
So yeah, I'm going to let Gary talk about this one too, because it's an important issue. It's absolutely true that the state legislators are mandating more things to the cities, and specifically they're mandating things about density that don't fit individual areas well. I'm glad that Tyler Clancy's here because he's with the state legislature. What you're saying is true. We can do some things to send messages as a city, but also as citizens. At the end of the day, the truth is the state legislator has power to mandate things. And so most of our focus has to be on working with those state legislators to be more Republican, be more, more allowing local areas to deal with their own problems and not trying to essentially control too much. I probably said that wrong.
And then making sure that we have in the city the appropriate zoning. I was pleased to see 10 years ago when Provo established the transit-oriented development zones, TOD, right along the near the front runner station, along the UVX line. And if we can focus that kind of growth in areas that can support it and maybe reduce some of the pressure on public streets, that's what I would support. And allowing those neighborhoods that are R1 or other residential areas continue to avoid the pack and stack that you talk about. Yeah, thank you for the question. Yes.
Dan, is Dan right? Oh, what?
Gary.
Gary, sorry. Oh, Gary, your first slide was really clear. And I'm bringing in the economic development, the zoning for open space, and your third slide was
quality of life.
That was the involvement. But your second slide, I was left kind of wondering what it was, what your platform was, and what exactly you meant specifically.
Okay, by community engagement. Yes, that was what I talked about. And it's just using the boards and commissions that we have in the city to involve more citizens, whether it's sustainability or historic preservation. We have great citizens who are bringing their skills to the city level and are helping on a volunteer basis to identify issues and challenges that we face and help resolve those. So it's helping promote community engagement through our boards and commissions.
Oh, sorry. I thought that was your third slide. I meant the second one where you said like safety or something.
So, and then quality of life.
Specific examples for that one.
I think about, as I look at Provo's quality of life and why we live here, I think about what people like about Provo. It's safe, it's clean, we have good public safety and good opportunities for recreation, trails. And so it's just to continue to promote and defend the access that we have to trails, parks, to the quality of life that we enjoy. You're welcome. Thanks for the question.
A slight tangent, but politicians are notorious for having broad visions and not much detail. To address some of that, I actually have a white paper which has 7 or 8 items that I'm specifically working to get done. Sometimes you have somebody who says, the East and West need to be more open and cooperate, et cetera, et cetera. Or you have somebody who says, there's a wall in Berlin, it needs to come down. One you can measure, one when you're making success. Um, on each of my points, and I think Gary is probably doing this as well, I have specific things that talk about how neighborhoods will get more notice when there's zoning changes, for example. How people will have more voice because they will actually have a process that requires their input before changes are made. Things on the budget where we have budgets that are more like our truth in lending budget or truth in whatever. It's the disclosure we have with property, truth in taxation, a similar type process where people can actually comment and have input on the entire budget, not what really amounts to a tiny fraction. So I appreciate your focusing in on key things because that is important and that is distinguishes a lot of leaders from others is a willingness to talk specifics.
Yes. What is your approach on hillsides here, particularly north of those sensitive hillside? What's your opinion on development?
Great question. I think that I'm going to talk generally and then specifically. Generally, we have kind of gone as far up the hill as we safely should for cost reasons, safety reasons, and other reasons. It's time to let the forest and the undeveloped place, not everywhere, but in general, we need to start drawing a line and saying these are part of shared, resources for everybody. Specifically, a couple of years ago, I don't know who, I was here, and I don't want to call people out, but Mr. Jones was trying to develop a hillside. I was very much against that. I don't think it was the right thing to do. Those things will continue until we find more permanent solutions where we have either dedicated them as preserves or made them into something else. In the meantime, we need to be vigilant. And that's not to say there's not areas that do need to be developed, but in general, the hillsides, streams, and river areas, we don't need to be adding density there.
And for me, it's a matter also of making sure the public continues to have access to the river, to the trails, to the hillsides. The brought to the, I think it was the first district at the last district meeting, was a new development that's part of Riverwoods, a new building there. And the council is vigilant in making sure that even if they want to put additional buildings there at Riverside, near the river, that the public can still access through trails. And so I think that's part of hillside development is making sure we preserve the access to the trails and the hills that we have and enjoy.
Because he paid.
Technically, it is a part-time job, and there's a salary. And I think the last time I earned that much, I was doing newspapers. I don't know the exact number. There is some compensation. It's $19,000 a year ish. I can get you details. You can have the job. It's much less than I'm probably going to spend on the election. Unfortunately. Yeah, we're probably going to want to wrap up here, and people who want to stay and ask other questions can. Is there anybody who has one final question, or should we
I before
go ahead? I see.
contemplate like questions for city councils just across the county, and so they're all fresh on my mind. So we have seen this drive toward this talk about climate and sustainability, but as I dug into it, I started recognizing that this was a narrative that was given to us, whether or not there was some actual scientific evidence that carbon is negative for us. And there's a great organization out of Washington, D.C. called the CO2 Coalition that's actually proving that carbon does things like increase your crop yield. And it's not really the villain that it is being portrayed to be. And so my question to you is, as a lot of this drive for changing our culture and society and the way that we operate on a day-to-day basis is been driven by this battle that maybe we never engaged in, that it appears that we lost, but maybe we need to backtrack and engage in. Have you guys looked at anything like that and maybe interjecting into the argument the separation between carbon versus emissions and seeing if there's some way to separate those? And so we don't change our whole society and everything that would happen in the West that we love and tell everybody they gotta stop drinking their coffees and walk and all those types of any kind. Great
question, Christy. I'm sure we'll both respond to this. A starting point. We are stewards of our environment. It is critically important that we take care of what we have. It's, it is our duty and responsibility. That being said, a lot of the efforts that have been raised lately are counterproductive. They actually make things worse. We shut down some energy production in the United States, so it will be produced by coal in China. That's not helping anyone. There's a lot of common sense solutions that can be pursued. We have not done well at engaging in this issue. I think there's people who are becoming aware of that. The state has a energy strike force that is working on this issue some, and they had a meeting with, I was out with John Curtis earlier this week, where he's exploring some options and some things to talk about. But I mean, he complicated quickly, but the bottom line is we have to engage on the topic. It is an important issue. It is going to affect our future, but we have to do it in ways that do not harm our economy or harm the people we're trying to help. And too often we go in the wrong direction. We shut down the things that are actually working really well. And that's big picture.
I think the way that our future is because there is an agenda and that it not has nothing to do with fun and fan.
No.
CO2 feeds the plants. The plants give us oxygen. We breathe the oxygen. We give them back CO2. And I'm very concerned that I see our youngsters in high school and junior high coming home with these crazy, twisted ideas that we're supposed to cut down our trees and put up solar panels or something like that. I think there's a very specific agenda that's very nefarious, and we need to be very aware of this agenda 2030 and what the UN is trying to do, and WHO, and they are all coming down in the top down trying to put us into this one world government. And our thing is going to be here in our local community. We've got to first of all, we got to get smart. Let's not be so dumb. And I mean, words, let's understand what's going on in the world. And then we've got to get pushback with intelligence and with information that's actually out there that people want to make you feel like you're being contentious because you're saying, look, the emperor had no clue of you being contentious.
Right. It does require great vigilance, yes, and good balance. I'm pleased to see one of the most active citizen advisory groups in the city is sustainability under the direction of Don Jarvis. Every time I go to a pharmacy and I see the sign to turn off my car, I think of Don. He put those signs up, and they just presented at the city council, and which accepted the sustainability plan for Provo. It has 10 points and is available online. It's an active committee that discusses some of the issues that you're referring to. And I think we have opportunities ourselves to engage with this committee and make sure that we're addressing.
Electric cars to make those lithium batteries.
They can't.
Know what it takes to get those lithium.
Right.
It is just so totally up.
Yeah.
Well, and evil is good right now. And we need to pull it out.
Yeah.
Stand up. No, it's not popular right now.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Great points. Well said. Well, thanks to all of you for your participation, for your interest and your concern for Provo, for being here today. We're happy to stay as long as we need to visit and answer additional questions that you may have.
Caitlin was going to give a quick wrap up.
Well, thanks everyone for coming out today. This has been really great. And I think we should give a round of applause for our two candidates here. Thank you for your service and for sharing your time. And I think we're all very excited about the direction that we're moving in with Provo. Just a couple of notes. If you'd like to get involved and support these two individuals with their campaigns, there's some easy things that you can do. We've got signs at this back table here. If you do take a sign to put in your front yard, if you'll just leave your address so that we know where to pick them up once all of this is over. Social media is a great way to share the message, talking to your neighbors, bringing it up in conversations. Really, I think to help people know who these folks are, an endorsement in any way that you can is meaningful. So thanks, everyone.